Hi, I'm Cameron Watts, minister of Fairlawn Avenue United Church. Welcome to the fifth in our six-part series of the study of John Shea's book, Starlight, Beholding the Christmas Miracle All Year Long. An in-person group gathered this past week to look at Chapter 5, The Magi Ride Again. This is a synopsis of what we learned together. I may have some questions for you. You may want to pause the clip. The chapter and our conversation about how we have enriched a simple narrative about the three wise men, or Magi, showing up at the door of a home in Bethlehem where Mary and Joseph and the baby appear to have settled. They found a reasonably priced apartment after all the census people left. See what I just did? I embellished. We take stories, we take narratives, and we enrich them. We take stories and narratives of our lives, and when we're telling the story, we make them larger than life. What story from your life has become larger? Or at least larger than you anticipated? In the book, he cites G.K. Chesterton saying that the Magi need to enter into the house where Mary and the child are, or else they will journey forever over the earth and never be at home. When they worship the God who lives on the earth, in the Christ, the mind that studies the sky will be saved. He tells the story of the legend of the three ages of the Magi, and says that the message of the Christ talks to every stage of the life process. We come to a curiosity or an understanding or an expectation of the Christ, of Jesus, and his voice sounds different to us. It sounds different when we are young. It sounds different when we are in the middle years. It sounds different when we are older. When we are very young, it's the voice of somebody perhaps at a church who taught us the Jesus stories and brought them to life for us. When we're older, we hear more of the anger and the frustration and the desire to make things better. We may even hear more of the holiness. And as we age, we might hear in the voice of Jesus some world weariness or acceptance, or we begin to understand what he talked about when he said, "Stop worrying about tomorrow." All ages must enter, and when we go in together, when we enter the story together, we discover we are different and the same. And we must enter the story together, or at least take turns going in the door. There is room for everybody and their story in this story. He retells T.S. Eliot's The Journey of the Magi, and with your forgiveness, I'm going to read it because I think it's one of the better ones that we retell when we embellish or seek to interpret what it means for the Magi to show up. A cold coming we had of it, just the worst time of year for a journey, and such a long journey. The ways deep and the weather sharp, the very dead of winter. And the camels galled, sore-footed, refractory, lying down in the melting snow. There were times we regretted the summer palaces on slopes, the terraces, and the silken girls bringing sherbet. Then the camel men, cussing and grumbling and running away and wanting their liquor and women, and the night fires going out, and the lack of shelter, and the cities hostile, and the towns unfriendly, and the villages dirty, and charging high prices. A hard time we had of it. At the end, we preferred to travel all night, sleeping in snatches, with the voices singing in our ears, saying, "This was all folly." Then at dawn we came down to a temperate valley, wet below the snow line, smelling of vegetation, with a running stream and a water mill heat beating the darkness, and 3 trees on the low sky. And an old white horse galloped away in the meadow. Then we came to a tavern with vine leaves over the lintel. 6 hands at an open door dicing the pieces of silver, and feet kicking the empty wineskins, but there was no information, and so we continued and arrived at evening. Not a moment too soon. Finding the place, it was, you may say, satisfactory. All this happened long ago. I remember, and I would do it again, but to set down then this were we all led all the way for birth or death. There was a birth, certainly. We had evidence, and no doubt I had seen birth and death, but we had thought they were different. This birth was hard and bitter agony for us, like death, our death. We returned to our places, these kingdoms, but no longer at ease here in this old dispensation with an alien people clutching their gods. I should be glad of another death. What does he mean, I should be glad of another death? We guessed maybe that we needed the courage to risk the new, knowing the old will not work. That the good things, the new things, the best things are worth the hardship of the journey. And there are things when we journey we must die to, we must leave behind. For me to live, says the Apostle Paul, or writes the Apostle Paul in the book to the church at Philippi, for me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Then we came up to another story, the one of the other wise man, that if you go to the church website, you will find a podcast where Rob Metcalf and I read it because it's one of our favorite stories. But includes this phrase, it is better to search and come up empty than to settle for something less. Have you searched and come up empty? But the search was worth it even though you settled for something less? Shea favors poetry, and he offers us another one that, again, with your forgiveness or permission, I'm going to read. It's his Langston Hughes carol of the Brown King. Of the 3 wise men who came to the king, one was a brown man. So they sing. Of the 3 wise men who followed the star, one was a brown king from afar. They brought the fine gifts of spices and gold and jeweled boxes of beauty untold. Unto his humble manger they came and bowed their heads in Jesus' name. 3 wise men, one dark like me, part of his nativity. Oh, this is the profound theology of incarnation. That Christ has united himself to human nature, and we with each other. And we are reborn into a life of inclusive relationships, writes Shea. And we say, it is so important to keep the door open to others, to keep no one from visiting and bringing their gifts to the Christ child, to this world. I've always wondered that we excluded others because they were different when they had gifts to bring, and when we exclude them, we lose their gifts. Later on, Shea will talk about how the Magi want the present king, Herod, to help them find the newborn king, and this is back to the story, with no gifts for Herod. And no wonder, says Shea, he and all Jerusalem were troubled. Who wants anything to do with a Jesus who sets aside their privilege? He ends the chapter with a commentary about how strangers are looking for something, and they sometimes come to us, and they wonder what we have to offer them. And Shea talks about how we live in a time of universal dialogue, when all traditions are learning who they are by learning who the stranger is. He says, no wonder the Magi come from the east to bring us news of what is being born in our midst. Welcome the stranger. Find out what gifts they bring to you and what gifts they're looking for from you. Thanks for joining us. I hope you will be with us next time. Please like this video. Check out the rest of our videos on YouTube. Consider subscribing. Check out our webpage, fairlawnchurch.ca, for more about us, especially if you are looking for a welcoming place in your journey. Be good to you.